it is scam, red mercury, whatever else, but there are real concerns about the vulnerabilities that may exist out there as far as stockpiles that still need to be buttoned down because these criminal gangs are looking for opportunities to make money, and it runs across continents. It's not just in a particular area locale. It runs throughout Asia, Europe, Western Hemisphere. These gangs and criminal syndicates are trying to obtain that material. Our concerns are global, and that's why the President has brought these individuals together today, which is to make sure that this is collective action.
And Chuck, the President was directly engaged on exactly this question when President Zardari and President Karzai traveled to the United States in March 2009 as part of that trilateral meeting. And I would say, as I mentioned in my announcement, I think one of the important developments out of the announcement relating to Ukraine is we understand the concentration of these types of materials in former Soviet republics. Chip.
Thank you, Robert. There's the material from Chile and now Ukraine, which you said could potentially come to the United States. Is the President concerned, are you concerned, that the United States might have to make itself kind of a storage facility, a global storage facility for this and for these materials? And if so, don't you have another Yucca Mountain with international implications?
Well, Chip, the goal of this summit, and the reason the President is so concerned about it, is our genuine concern about the security environment in which this material is held. We don't worry about the security environment with which that material is held in this country, whether that's in different places around the country. The President sees, as John mentioned, the threat of this type of material falling into the hands of somebody who wants to use it for their evil designs as the number one security threat that we face as a world. So I think this is just the type of announcement that we would like to see. I traveled with the then Senator Obama to Ukraine in 2005 with Senator Lugar. We visited a facility that basically the equivalent of the Ukraine CDC. We walked into a room, and out of a refrigerator, somebody who worked there took out a series of test tubes that were anthrax. Suffice to say, I think the level at which we believe that type of material ought to be secured, in 2005, that standard was not being met at the facility we went to. We provide through, on nuclear issues, through the Nunn-Lugar program and in other programs, the type of funding necessary to help many of these countries secure this material. We have assisted Ukraine in a number of those projects, whether it be biological, chemical, or in this case, nuclear. John, if you have anything to add.
In many cases, won't it be necessary to bring that material to the United States to make sure that it is secure?
In some instances, it will be, and Chip, we welcome that. Again, there's a
materials from this country being transported to Yucca Mountain. How are you going to transport materials from around
safely,
the world to the United States?
As we did with Chile? Remember, Chip, that we have a choice, right? We can take a flyer on this being secured somewhere else in hopes that somebody with the type of designs that John discussed, or, needless to say, in a tough economic situation, somebody working in one of these labs who needs some money, making a sale. I think the American people feel wholly more confident that the material of which not a huge amount can destroy an entire city. I think they'd feel far more secure knowing that that material is under safe lock and key and guard in this country rather than potentially floating around somewhere else. Jake?
I have a question for you and a couple for Mr. Brennan. You said that the Ukraine is committed to having all this highly enriched uranium disposed of by the time of the next nuclear security summit. When is the next nuclear security
2012. We'll announce likely tomorrow the location for that.
Okay. And then, Mr. Brennan, according to the Nuclear Threat Initiative, Ukraine has almost 70 kilograms of highly enriched uranium at the Kharkiv Institute of Physics and Technology, 13.2 at the Institute for Nuclear Research in Kiev, and up to 6.1 at the, I don't even know how to pronounce it, Sevastopol Naval Research Institute. Is that what you're talking about? It's all going to be disposed of, or is there additional highly enriched uranium that we don't know about?
I would say that, if my math is correct, is roughly 90 kilograms. I'm under the impression that it's actually more than that. I don't want to get into a specific amount. It's enough, as I said, for the construction of several nuclear weapons. And I would say many, many times greater than the amount that was recovered from Chile, although that obviously was an important announcement in ensuring that any of that highly enriched uranium is now under lock and key.
One more crack, Mr.
Sure.
Mr. Gibbs said that the United States has been trying to do this for 10 years. What made the difference? Why is it happening now?
There has been an effort over many years to try to ensure that nuclear materials are going to be safeguarded. This was one of the priority items that President Obama had when he entered office. And there has been a lot of work that has been done over the past 15 months in order to get to this point today, where we can bring together so many major world leaders who recognize that there is a threat out there and it requires collective action, because terrorist groups and international criminal organizations will look for the weakest link in a chain. And that's why it's so critically important that all countries take their responsibility seriously.
Thank you.
Dan?
First, Mr. Brennan, if you can clarify again, this ongoing threat that you were talking about from these terrorist groups, Al-Qaeda, is there anything specific now that intelligence is telling you that this threat exists? Not just general threat over the last 10 years or the last 5 years, but anything actively going on now that intelligence can point to?
I think you can point to a lot of Al-Qaeda activities and public statements that underscore their determination to carry out attacks against U.S. Western interests as well as the interests of other countries and nations. And there is a significant amount of intelligence that underlies those statements and those assessments that are public. Al-Qaeda has demonstrated this determination and also extreme patience in going after particular types of capabilities. And we know for certain that there are individuals that have been within Al-Qaeda that have been given this responsibility. This is a very, very tough challenge, though, for us to be able to look worldwide to see where Al-Qaeda might be undertaking biological, chemical, radiological, or nuclear programs. And so there is intelligence that indicates that Al-Qaeda continues its murderous agenda and continues to look toward WMD capabilities in order to carry out that agenda.
On Iran and where China is in terms of embracing tougher sanctions, can you give us an update on that? Do they seem to be softening more to that?
Dan, let me not get ahead of the meeting that I think is about 15 minutes, if they're still on schedule, from happening. We will do a readout of what's discussed in the meeting afterwards. I think we've all seen reports over the last several weeks of the progress that the P5+1 is making, including China. The president had a very constructive discussion with President Medvedev just a few days ago in Prague in moving this along, and I think I was, and I think others were struck by the notion that the president outlined the desire to see next steps if Iran refused to live up to its obligations, and the first sentence out of the mouth of the Russian president was that he couldn't disagree with that assessment. Jonathan?
I'd just like to take a stab again at what Chip was talking about. These nuclear materials have half-lives in the thousands of years, if not the tens of thousands of years. Yeah. And Yucca Mountain was being designed to store material for that long length of time. Is this...
Understanding, Jonathan, we're not talking about the same material that would have been deposited in Yucca as to highly enriched uranium that we would... And without getting... I think you could find that the location of many of the labs and security sites that we have that are fairly commonly known on where this is. So again, I just don't want to. I think the notion of drawing a very easily connected line to somehow